Here's the Mets lineup tonight. Len Dykstra is the leadoff hitter, and then Tim Tuffle, who is now the everyday second baseman, backman disabled. Keith Hernandez, per usual, hits third. Gary Carter is the cleanup hitter. Darryl Strawberry, who had a very active week, is in right field. Kevin McReynolds is in left. Howard Johnson bats seventh. Rafael Santana, he's been hot, batting eighth. And on the mound is Dwight Gooden. Meeting going on at home plate right now. Manager Buck Rogers of Montreal and Davey Johnson of the Mets, along with the umpires. And 3 of the 4 umpires worked in Pittsburgh over the weekend. Lee Wire will be behind the plate tonight. Ed Montague is at first base. Tom Hallion will be at second. And Dutch Rennert, who was the plate umpire in Pittsburgh yesterday, will be at third. Rennert was forced to eject Davey Johnson and John Mitchell because in yesterday's game, Pirates starting pitcher Brian Fisher hit Tim Tuffle. Both managers were warned if there was any retaliation that the pitcher and manager would subsequently be thrown out. And you were there, Tim, in Pittsburgh yesterday when John Mitchell rushed back Brian Fisher. John was gone, and so was Davey.
And the whole thing stemmed from Darryl Strawberry being hit by Bob Kipper on Saturday night. And I asked Dutch, who was the home plate umpire yesterday, of course, if the umpiring crew had discussed issuing the warning to both managers before the game. He said they had discussed it, but that they felt that the events that happened the night before were not serious enough to warrant a warning. And consequently, when Fisher hit Tuffle, there was a warning, and then Mitchell threw close to Fisher, and Mitchell and Davey Johnson were ejected. But kind of an inequity in that rule, because after all, the Mets had 2 players hit and 3 players ejected.
That's right. And the Pirates had none hit, none ejected, and wound up splitting the 2 games. The Expos take the field. Well, with that as background, and just to follow up on what took place, Darryl Strawberry reflects on the incident the other night when he charged the mound and charged Bob Kipper.
Well, yes, there's been a couple times I had problems with the left-hand pitchers over there in the Pittsburgh staff. You know, they say they want to pitch me in, but he's got great control. You know, he's pitched me in a lot, and he's had great success pitching in against me. But at that particular time, I felt he was throwing at me, and I was kind of frustrated about a lot of things. And I didn't know at that particular time they had made a new rule about charging the mound, and you ejected from the game right away. And you know, next time I know better. I think I kind of just, like I said, I took my anger out and kind of lost my head in that situation and went out there, and it was a bad mistake because I think I kind of cost the ball club a big loss with my bat being out of the lineup because we ended up losing the ball game 3-2.
Very honest admission, and I know Davey Johnson was interested when we interviewed Darryl, and there are the Montreal Expos defensively, as to what Strawberry said. And Davey, I think, was very pleasantly surprised that Darryl admitted that he had made a mistake the other night and had taken the blame for that loss.
Davey obviously concerned about Darryl Strawberry because Strawberry showed up late last Tuesday in Chicago. He was fined, and Johnson didn't have him in the lineup on Wednesday. He did, however, play in the exhibition game on Thursday, and things are all right now between them, but only all right
tonight.
Well,
yeah,
Davey
right.
I talked to him at the batting cage, and he was talking about the fact that if Darryl was his 12-year-old son, that he would take him into a room and explain the facts of life. And I think a lot of times part of baseball is making mistakes, learning from them, which he admitted. And also, you'll have a player like Darryl who's 25, yet he may be a little less mature than other players that are 25. So maybe Davey ought to take him in the room and have a talk with him. You can't always assume, especially in this game.
Speaking of sons and speaking of Strawberry, a happy birthday to Darryl's 2-year-old, Darryl Jr. in Los Angeles tonight. So the Mets come into Montreal, and the Mets certainly not out of the race by any stretch of the imagination. 7.5 back, but the way the Cardinals are going and the way things are developing in the National League East, I don't think anybody in that Met clubhouse is going to be very comfortable if they fall too much further back. As Len Dykstra starts things off, Dykstra, Tuffle, and Hernandez, 3 men hitting better than 300 to lead off in the first.
What seems so impressive to me about the Cardinals is the way they're winning games. They're doing exactly the way they did it in 1985. Good defense. They've had some injuries, as the Mets have had, and they're leading the National League in runs scored. So they're doing a lot of things well, and that's why they had the lead.
Dennis Martinez, in his second start since being called up, takes high for a ball. Does Dykstra, and the count is 1-0.
Talked a little bit earlier about how impressive Dennis was the other night against Pittsburgh. 7 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs. Fastball, curveball, slider, changeup pitcher, but he had an excellent curveball the other night. Good fastball, over 90 miles per hour. In the opening, we talked about a alcohol problem that he had, which we hope that he is really beaten. And I think when you talk to Dennis, he will say that's a problem that's always going to linger. I'm going to have to address that problem on a daily basis, and he's been able to do that the last couple of years.
1 ball, 1 strike, the count on Dykstra, leading off in the top of the first inning. Martinez first came up with Baltimore way back in 1976, had several productive years with the Orioles. Twice he won 16 games, once a 15-game winner, and a total of 111 big league wins. Then sent to Montreal last year, became a free agent, ineligible to come back with the same club until the 1st of May, so he opted to work in Florida in A-ball. Little squibber back to him, and Dykstra's gone for the first out, 1 down.
We had a perfect example of that good curveball. Established the fastball, got ahead, threw him a curve, and an easy comebacker. What I always liked about Dennis, Al, is that the fact that he has good work habits. And really, if you look at his career, it's really been two careers before the alcohol problem and after. Before, he was 82 and 57, and over the last 3 years, he's 29 and 42. So he came here last year out of a rehabilitation program in Rochester, struggled, had some arm problems. It was 3 and 6, but Bob Rogers, the manager here in Montreal, liked the way he threw the ball.
He works now on Tim Tuffle, and the count is 1-0. Tim Tuffle, who normally is platoon with Wally Backman, drove in 9 runs last week. Backman wound up being placed on the disabled list as he pulled his hamstring in Chicago.
And Tim Tuffle is a much better hitter against right-handed pitching than he is against left-handers, even though his career stats are dead even, 266 both ways.
2-0 the count. Bob Rogers, who managed Milwaukee and was the manager in Milwaukee the year they won the pennant. The only problem was Buck wasn't around at the end. He was replaced by Harvey Keene in midseason. And Tuffle is on. So Tim walks on 4 pitches, and the Mets have a runner at first base with 1 gone. And it brings up Keith Hernandez. Keith Hernandez now starting to drive in runs, even though his stats are fairly impressive. He was not coming through in a lot of clutch situations in late April and early May, and was taking a little bit of heat in New York for not producing.
That's been really the problems of the Mets offense. Matter of fact, they're a little bit better as far as a team batting average is concerned this year, but they're hitting with runners in scoring position. That has alarmed Davey Johnson. They're only batting .234 as a team with runners in scoring position. So they're getting the hits, but they're not getting them when they count, until recently.
Tuffle at first base with 1 out. 1-0. Still, Hernandez, despite his problems with men in scoring position, is the ultimate model of consistency. 3 years ago, he hit .311. 2 years ago, he hit .309. Last year, he hit .310. And tonight, he comes in batting .308.
Make you throw strikes.
You talk about banking on somebody.
9 times he's won the Gold Glove. I mean, he can do a lot of things for you. It's like having a pitching coach in the infield. If you watch him, he is very much into the game with every at bat, but also when he's out in the field. So, of course, a lot of people are Keith Hernandez detractors because of the RBIs.
He hits a high fly ball to right field, and the versatile one, the rookie Casey Candell, gets underneath it to make the catch for the second out. Tuffle retreating to first, and with Hernandez now the captain of the Mets, as denoted by that C, trots back. Gary Carter and his 9-game hitting streak come to the plate. with a typical Montreal reaction. He was so popular here for so many years, but then once he left in that trade 3 years ago, that was the end of the love affair. But a few old friends do remain. Strike, 0-1.
That's what friends are for.
Thank you, Dion. Pitch. Missing, and the count 1 ball and 1 strike on Carter. As usual, playing through a lot of pain. And Carter with good success here, at least in terms of driving in runs since his departure.
Tuffle really no threat to run. You mentioned the pain that Carter is playing in. Of course, all catchers do play in pain, but Gary Carter has had more than his share so far this year. The foul tips off his feet. You see that padding on his left foot lessen the blow a bit. Also, 3 days ago, Jay Horwitz, the public relations director of the New York Mets, informs us that Gary switched to steel-toed shoes. I'm a little bit surprised that more catchers don't use those.
Steel-toed shoes and that padding as well to protect against any foul ball off his front foot. In there for a strike, and the count is 2-2.
One of those little respect pitches. You can see the look from Gary Carter. Said that ball's high, but a 2-1 changeup. That'll get your respect. Of course, the reason for that is that Carter not hitting for a lot of power this year, but year in and year out, one of these guys that does not strike out a whole lot, but does hit somewhere around 30 home runs. Last year with the injury, only 22.
Little grounder down to short, and U.B. Brooks throws to first to retire the side, and the Mets are done in the top of the first. And after a half in Montreal, it's the Mets nothing, and the Expos coming up. Lineup tonight for the Montreal Expos. The good-looking rookie Casey Candel leads off, and Herm Winningham, ex-Met, bats second. Tim Raines, last year's batting champ, bats third. Cleanup hitter is the third baseman Tim Wallach. U.B. Brooks is back in the lineup. He bats fifth. Andre Scalaraga having a great season, bats sixth. Vance Law, the steady second baseman. Jeff Reed over from Minnesota does the catching, and there's Dennis Martinez. And the Mets defensively tonight: McReynolds in left, Dykstra in center, Strawberry in right. The infield of Johnson at third, Santana the shortstop, Tuffle at second, and Hernandez at first, with Gary Carter back of the plate, and Dwight Gooden on the mound. And the story well known and well documented: the admission of cocaine use, the rehabilitation through April, brought back slowly in May, worked his way up through Triple-A, pitching for Tidewater, and then the Mets noting or putting a spotlight on the date of June the 5th, some 3 weeks prior to that night, knowing they would be at home where it would be more comfortable for Gooden to break in, and a big crowd looked on that Friday night, a week ago Friday, as he beat the Bucks and then came back to beat Chicago on Wednesday. So he is 2-0.
I think an interesting thing that you talked about, Tim, in the opening of the show was that he was so impressive with his curveball that you sometimes forget about the 94-mile-per-hour fastball that goes with it. But I think in talking to Davey, and I think the reason that you talked about that was that his curveball was very much like it was in 1985. And you're going to a year where he was 24-4 with a 153 earned run average. That's amazing.
Casey Candel leads things off for Montreal. Candel is hitting .302. And that's the highest average for any rookie in the league. The only others above the .270 mark who have 75 or more plate appearances: Benito Santiago of San Diego and the Mets' Dave Magadan.
Well, Bob Rogers talked about Casey Candel. He said we had him in spring training. excellent year last year at Indianapolis. We knew he'd be a utility player. Had no idea that he would play so much.
3-1 the count.
I think you'll see Candell taking here, but that's something I've never seen Gooden do. He went into that deep knee bend, which makes one believe that he's not quite loose yet.
3-2.
Dwight talked about, I said, how do you pitch here? And he said, well, I either do real well or real bad. No middle of the road here.
Keep searching for mediocrity, right?
Exactly. Everybody else has a lock on it, and he's searching for it.
Yeah. Not much mediocrity in his career. Everybody's
boy.
saying a 17-6 mark was an off year. I guess to put it in perspective, his lifetime record is 60-19. And he's already thrown 7 pitches to Casey Candell with a count 3-2.
Well, that's good and bad. As Tim said, when you're doing the deep knee bends out on the mound, sometimes you're not loose. So you don't want to go 3-2 on a guy of diminutive stature and take a chance of walking him, even though Candell does not run that well. But this does give you an opportunity to get loose. You'd like to think you'd already done that in the bullpen, but sometimes it's just harder to do.
And pitch number 8 is fouled away. So it's still 3-2 with Winningham on deck. And then Tim Raines to follow. No score as the Mets and Expos open up a 4-game series in Montreal. Candell, a tough man to fan. Switch hitter, and a consistent switch hitter, hitting .301 from this side and .304 the other way. And Candell draws the walk. So Dwight starts the game by throwing 9 pitches to the leadoff man. The Expos have a man at first with nobody out, and Herm Winningham is at the plate. Winningham was one of the 4 acquired by Montreal in the Gary Carter deal, and that's one of those deals, to exercise the cliche, that has turned out pretty well for both sides. The Mets certainly happy with Carter, the way Gary's performed. And Montreal winding up the key man of the deal being U.B. Brooks, who's done a wonderful job for them at shortstop when he's been healthy. And they got Winningham and Floyd Yeomans in the deal, who's on the disabled list right now, and Mike Fitzgerald, the catcher.
4 guys on the 24-man roster. I think you might see Winningham bunting here. Normally you wouldn't do that, but managers manage a different type game when Dwight Gooden is pitching.
Johnson has shortened up at third. Candell, who has 3 steals, away to his lead, breaking pitch for a strike. Jackie Moore, who a year ago was managing at Oakland, is the Expo third base coach.
I walked out to the batting cage and I said, Herm, are you playing? He said, yes. I said, do you know what your lifetime is off Dwight Gooden? He said, you won what? I said, don't be so positive. I said, you're 0 for 11 with 4 strikeouts. He said, you mean I never? He says, I'm due.
You had to remind him. Tim Raines is on deck. There are a few guys 0 for 11.
Yes, that's what. Well, that's exactly what Herm said.
Strikeouts.
He said, I'm not the only guy. I don't want you to tell everybody across the country that I'm the only guy that's 0-11 with 4 strikeouts. An interesting 1986. Hit .216 on the whole, but hit much better against left-handers, and being a left-handed hitter, only .201 against righties. He attributed it to trying to pull, trying to hit, maybe, even though he's a diminutive guy, trying to hit more home runs. This year he's just tried to hit the ball back up the middle. He still hit left-handers well, and he's hitting much better against right-handers. He's an outstanding defensive center fielder, or really outfielder, anywhere they put him.
Liner off the glove of Johnson down to Santana, and he goes to Tuffle at second for your routine 5-6-4 force.
Howard Johnson was playing so far in, looking for the possibility of the bunt. If you can't catch it, it's smart to try to guide it, and that's what Johnson does. Watch. Shuffle it off to Santana, and now over to Tuffle. I think you hit the nail on the head why Winningham, Jim, is hitting the ball better, because he's trying to hit the ball back through the middle. And if he weren't in a position to hit that outside fastball then with that front shoulder closed, That's your routine ground ball to second. A lot of hitters improve on their batting averages by hitting the ball back through the middle, and this is one guy that you can say that about in the same breath.
And another man who's improved on his average, and that's no easy feat, is at the plate right now. Tim Raines, who led the league in hitting in '86. Very shortly, Raines will have enough at-bats to qualify, and you'll begin to see his name in the paper and probably up at the top of the list among the batting leaders. He comes in batting .367, and the reason he's not already on that list is the fact that he missed all of April. He was one of those free agents who were, well, some would say frozen out and had to re-sign with his old club. Joined the Expos on the 2nd of May, promptly broke back in with a grand slam home run at New York, and he's been red hot ever since. 1-0.
I asked him about how he was greeted when he came back to Montreal, seeing that he did try to at least make his talents available to 25 other clubs, and he said maybe those games I had in New York had something to do with my reception. You know, the grand slam, the game-winning home run in the extra innings. He said they were very warm, and this is after a winter really of discontent where he did try to go somewhere else. Not maybe as openly as Dawson.
Winningham goes, and there is no throw as he gets a big break. Gooden delivering to the plate, and an easy uncontested steal for Herm. His 8th.
Well, the one thing that Dwight Gooden does have is a big windup at 85. They stole like 45 out of 47. He adjusted, went down instructional to try to work on it, but right here, as you can see, Herm Winningham, he gets a good jump. Carter doesn't even make a throw. When you're 1-0 on a hitter like Range, you know you have to throw a strike. You take a little bit longer to get rid of the ball. Easy stolen base.
Raines hits the 2-0 pitch on the ground to second, and Tuffle goes to Hernandez as Winningham advances to third. Montreal now with a runner at third, 2 gone, and Tim Wallach at the plate. You know, when you look at the Expos, one of the reasons they are doing so well, and certainly better than anybody expected, their top 6 hitters tonight, 1 through 6 in the order, 5 of them are hitting .300 or better, including Wallach at .308. And Winningham's the other, and he's hitting .288. And then you go down to number 7, Law's batting .289.
I think when you look at this attack, you say, well, this is not much of an attack because they don't have a whole lot of home run threats. They lost Andre Dawson with 20 home runs. But if you look at the type of club they have, really maybe Wallach along with Ubi Brooks, and because of the thumb injury last year and the broken wrist this year, you really don't know if he's going to hit for power, even though he has hit some home runs the last week or so. This is their legitimate home run hitter, and a lot of people are scoffing at their ability to score runs, and all they do is go out and score runs and score runs, and they're tied with the Mets as far as run production.
And they are second only to the Cardinals in team batting average right now with a collective .273.
Talking about that roof, they feel that this is a much better hitter's ballpark, always what you would label a pitcher's ballpark. No more. They think they can reach the fences. It's really certainly changed the ambiance here. It's not as cold as it used to be. They said it makes the day games better because even on a nice day such as today, say this was a Sunday afternoon, you have the shadows.
Guess you could say every night's Halloween here.
3-1. Le Grand Orange, huh? I guess it's appropriate that the inside of the roof here should be orange, because when the Expos were born in '69, the big star was Rusty Staub, Le Grand himself. That's grounded toward the middle and through for a base hit. Winningham scores, and Montreal leads 1-0. And Tim Wallach up among the leaders with 54 RBIs.
And this is the first time that Dwight Gooden has been behind since his return. Santana playing in the hole. Rafael Santana, the shortstop, does not have a lot of range, and consequently has to play toward the position at third. And he does cheat toward that hole because he doesn't have a real strong arm. Consequently, hits like that can trickle up the middle.
So the stolen base by Winningham pays off. It puts him in a position to score as Wallach bounces one through the middle. And UB Brooks is the batter, the one-time Met who missed the last 2 months of last season, had thumb surgery, comes back healthy this year, and then has his wrist shattered the 3rd day of the season by Danny Darwin on a pitch in a game against Houston, and has just come back within the last 3 weeks. Had a big night Friday night. Brooks was 5 for 5 with 6 RBIs against the Phillies.
There's that excellent curveball just missed, and you said behind. You meant obviously score 1-0, the deficit that Good now faces, but he has faced 5 hitters. He's been behind every one of them. And I went up to Dwight and I said, you know, I read in the papers that, you know, your fastball is not as good as it was in '85. You had a good curveball. How do you feel you're throwing? He said, I've been behind too many hitters. He's been behind all 5 tonight.
Hit in the air to left center field, and it's Dykstra waving McReynolds away and making the catch to retire the side. But they parlay a steal, an advancement on Raines's grounder, and Wallach's single for a run. Montreal won, and the Mets nothing. Montreal, Al Michaels along with Jim Palmer and Tim McCarver at Olympic Stadium, with the Expos leading the Mets 1-0 going to the top of the 2nd inning, and Darryl Strawberry to lead off with McReynolds and Johnson to follow. Darryl Strawberry, who has just been through the week that was, takes a strike. Showed up late in Chicago Monday and then late again on Tuesday, and that caused Dave Johnson to fine him $250 and bench him on Wednesday. And then the altercation in Pittsburgh and subsequent ejection from the game on Saturday. Through it all, a home run yesterday, his 17th of the season to lead the club. Strike and the count 1-2.
And that's a pitch you see him on an everyday basis that he cannot afford to swing at. Looks like he handles the ball much better down in the strike zone. If he chases a high fastball, it's going to be a fruitless evening.
Still 1-2.
Well, that's one of the reasons his average is as high as it is. He's batting .277, and also one of the reasons that his home run production is up, as Al said, with 17. The reason is he's been laying off that pitch inside. He's walked 26 times in the last 26 games.
Still 1-2.
And I think Darryl is finally realizing that the more he walks, the better he hits. Because when you walk a lot, you're more selective, and that's the biggest difference in Darryl Strawberry this year as compared to years past. It's his selectivity.
1-2 pitch is lined to right field and a right at Candell for the out. One away. And Kevin McReynolds to the plate.
Excuse me, Al, it's one of those pitches, 1 and 2, you try to make a good pitch, you don't, and then you luck out. And Strawberry hit that ball right on the nose, but right at Candell and right. A mistake that he got away with.
Kevin McReynolds came over from San Diego during the offseason. Mets sending, among others, Kevin Mitchell west. And McReynolds has responded with 10 homers, 29 runs batted in. He's done a more than adequate job in left field, and he's pretty much done what the Mets had hoped and expected. 2-0 the count. And he's a guy who'd love to get a chance to play in the World Series. You'll recall he played on San Diego's pennant-winning team in 1984, then had the misfortune in breaking up a double play in Game 4 to fracture his hand, and that put him out of the series. 2-1.
You're talking one of the premier outfielders in the National League last year. 288, 28 home runs, 96 RBIs. It's almost like San Diego took a look at their ball club late in the year and they said, who has the most value? Where can we go to get some young players? They looked at the Mets. They knew the Mets would be trying to improve a world championship club, which is what they did. I think everybody, when this trade was made, said, oh, the Mets are in. And then you have the devastating injuries to their pitchers. The only thing he can't really do is steal bases.
2-2 pitch to McReynolds is hit into right field for a base hit. And the Mets have their first hit of the night. McReynolds is at first base with 1 gone. And it will bring up Howard Johnson, who last year platooned with Ray Knight. Actually, Knight, by virtue of the type of season he had, almost became an everyday regular, relegating Johnson to something less than a platoon role. But this year, a whole other story. He's become an Iron Man, Tim.
He really has. He has played third base most of the time, and then when Dave Magadan has been given a chance to play, Johnson has moved to short, and Santana has grabbed some pine. However, Santana is batting .315 over the last 26 ball games, and the Mets are a much better ball club with Santana in there. That at least is what Davy Johnson is. Even though you don't have the offense, even against right-handed pitching, you do have a much more solid defense.
Mets brain trust with Johnson, Mel Stottlemyre, Bud Harrelson. One-0 pitch, missing away, and the count 2-0. Johnson already with 11 home runs this season, and that eclipsed his mark for all of '86 when he hit 10. His career high would have been 12 with Detroit back in '84.
Some hitters are adaptable to pitches. Howard Johnson is one hitter that almost has the same swing at every pitch. Change up, breaking ball. He's vulnerable to the breaking ball, but he can turn anybody's fastball around, and I mean anybody's. They can't throw it hard enough that he can't hit it foul.
This is a good hitting situation. 2-0.
Hits it sharply on a hop down to second, and Brooks turns it back to Galarraga, not in time. Vance Law had to back up on the ball and settles for the fourth with McReynolds erased and Johnson safe at first.
Vance Law makes a nice play. 2-0 pitch, the one that Johnson wants. The ball tails away. Law stays right with it. Knows he has the lead runner. He does. And there you see, really not a very good throw from Brooks, but you never know whether Johnson's going to be running hard or not. You assume he will be. Galarraga, who is an excellent hitter and also an excellent fielder, makes a nice play just to keep the runner at first.
Now Santana hitting a sort of un-Santana-like 267. Tim talking about what he's meant to the team offensively, and that comes after a poor April. He had a great May. Runner goes, the pitch is a strike, the throw is too late. And Johnson with a steal. And that's 12 for Hojo.
This is a stolen base on the pitcher, not the catcher. Jeff Reed, one of the outstanding young catchers with a throwing arm. Dennis just went to sleep. Johnson, who does run fairly well, just steals it on the pitcher. Dennis just kind of needs to take a no-dose to wake him up at it. He did that in Baltimore, and I assume he's still doing that.
0-1 is a half swing strike, and Martinez ahead now 0-2.
I thought that was a very fair explanation, Jim.
You like that?
Took the burden off the catcher. Very objective from a former 268 game winner.
Well, it's one of those things where you see a good fastball up and away where the catcher, it's a perfect pitch you want to throw on. You're coming out, you're going forward, and the play is not even close. You know that Martinez did not do his job as far as holding Howard Johnson close at first.
None of the Expo pitchers do, as a matter of fact. They have only thrown out 14 runners, and 5 of those 14 were thrown out when Jay Tibbs was the pitcher, and Jay Tibbs is in the minor leagues now pitching for Indianapolis.
1-2 pitch, got him looking. So Santana is down on strikes, rung up by wire, and the Mets are done in the top of the second. No runs, a hit, and a man left on at the end of an inning and a half in Olympic Stadium. Expos 1, Mets nothing.
This is Corey McFerrin in New York. Update on the Tigers and Blue Jays from Toronto. The story, the American League's top hitter, Detroit's Alan Trammell. Fourth inning, no score. Trammell rips one to right field, somehow bounces through Jesse Barfield to the wall. Bill Madlock around to score. Trammell's hitting streak now at 20 games, the longest in the majors this year. 2-0 Tigers in the sixth.
In the bottom of the second inning, Montreal on top 1-0. Dwight Gooden in the first walked Casey Candell, who was forced by Herm Winningham. Winningham stole second, went to third on Rains's ground out, and scored on Tim Wallach's base hit. And now in the bottom of the second, Andres Galarraga to lead off, the number 6 hitter and up among the league leaders, taking high. Andres in his second season out of Venezuela after a long minor league stint. You think of him as a young player, but he's already 26 years old. 5 homers, 40 RBIs. 2-0 the count. We have the speed gun here tonight, the Jugs gun, and Gooden's first pitch of the inning was clocked at 94. And that one's probably up close to the area. 95, we're now told by our producer Ken Wolf, and the count is 2-1.
Well, I don't want to undermine his fastball, but that is the faster of the 2 guns. So he is on the slow gun right around 90, 91, and 95. Don't get me wrong, he's getting it up there. But again, behind Galarraga, so now every hitter he's faced, he's been behind, and that is something that he's not happy with.
Grounded back through the middle into center field for a base hit. So Andres, who comes in hitting .333, will watch that rise a couple of points. And it will bring up Vance Law.
Once you throw the ball, you are become an infielder, and Dwight right there failed to do that. Followed through with it on the fastball, was totally out of position, and the ball that you might be able to deflect, most likely on a curveball. It always seems like, at least when I pitched, you would come a little bit in a better position to field the ball. That was a fastball right up the middle, just a grounder, but nobody's playing there.
Vance Law, son of the former great Pirate pitcher Vernon Law, hits one to right field and slicing away from Strawberry, but he gets there to make the catch on his way toward the line as Galarraga gets back to first base. So Law is gone for the first out of the bottom of the second inning. And now Jeff Reed, and Tim talked about his defensive prowess, but offensively hitting .133, and he has yet to get a hit at home. He's 0 for 14 in this ballpark.
Earlier in the year, Sean Dunston charged Andy McGaffigan of the Chicago Cubs. Matter of fact, that was one of the big reasons that, or the reason that Dwight Gooden was kicked out of the game in Saturday night's game, or I should say Darryl Strawberry, because he charged the mound. It was called the Dunston rule, as you see the Jugs gun there, checking out Dwight. And Jeff Reed was one of those in the bottom of the pile, and consequently was seriously injured in that pileup and was put on the disabled list. So in fairness to Jeff, he hasn't had a chance to get his feet wet in the National League.
Reed coming over in the Jeff Reardon deal, which was so maligned here during the offseason, but has turned out pretty well to this point for Montreal, because they've picked up Neil Heaton, who became the National League's first 9-game winner on Saturday.
Well, he's giving them about 7 solid innings every time out there. As we said, they've been scoring runs. The ERA high 3s.
Down to Santana, who juggles. That may have cost them, but it doesn't. They still get the double play, despite his juggling the ball with Reed's foot speed, and he's slow. Tuffle able to turn it over, and Montreal gone in the second.
Well, you've heard of the Jugs gun. Well, here's the Juggles gun, but Santana and Tuffle still make the pivot.
And at the end of 2, still 1-0 Montreal. Montreal on top by a score of 1-0 as we go to the third. Dwight Gooden was asked what he's learned from the last 3 months.
Things, just pleasing yourself, not trying to please others, and just do the things that you're capable of doing in your own standards, and I learn more about myself and who I am and the things that I want to do in life, not only baseball.
So Dwight Gooden, who rejoined the Mets on the 5th of June and has won his first 2 outings, leads off at the top of the third and fouls it away in the count 0-1. Gooden's problem well documented, and then the injuries, of course, to the other Met pitchers as you look at Dennis Martinez, which points up an interesting thing in regard to Martinez, and that is lack of concentration. That graphic illustrating how tough he is against the really good hitters and how many problems he has against the others, and that was always the rap on him in Baltimore.
Well, again, if you talk about good and having great ability, Dennis has the ability usually to throw 4 pitches: the fastball, the curveball, the slider, and the changeup. Get them all over. Used to sidearm guys. He's a pretty good fielder. Works hard. But occasionally he has those lapses of concentration. And again, we go back. You talked about him winning 15 games in 1981, the year of the strike. He was really, I think, a 14-game winner. Was the best pitcher in the American League that year. Yet he does lose it every once in a while out there.
Gooden lifts it in the air down the line in right field. Candell running out of room, trying to stay with it, and makes the play. And Candell has been a busy man. That's already his 3rd putout of the night.
Buck Rogers talking about how valuable Casey Candell has been to this club. Only his 4th start in right field this year. And when you have to watch the wall and the ball, it's doubly tough. But a fine play by Candell.
And the ball girl.
Yeah, that's right.
It's triply tough when you have to watch the ball girl.
3 Bs.
Dykstra now grounded out in the 1st inning. Len, who shares time with Mookie Wilson, and both doing a very good job offensively. Dykstra at 300 and Mookie, who's on the bench tonight, at 310. To the count. And there's number 1. Bat in hand, waiting for his opportunity. Long about the 8th inning tonight, he figures, if needed.
Anytime Davy Johnson makes a double switch, one of the 4 outfielders, depending on who's starting, will be the man who goes into either left, center, or right field. And for that reason, Mookie Wilson, because of his flexibility, probably a more valuable man to the Mets now than he was as a regular.
Dykstra goes down on strikes, and that's number 2 for Martinez. And it's been that sort of night when you're trailing 1-0. A little litter begins to accumulate at the feet of Davy Johnson and Mel Stottlemyre. The sunflower seeds.
Looking at Davy Johnson's left knee. Of course, it's been that kind of year after you win 108 games, go all the way to the World Series and win in 7. And really early in the season, but getting late rapidly. You're 7.5 back.
Tuffle hits a fly ball to Raines. And Dennis Martinez has a 1-2-3 inning as the Mets go silently in the 3rd. And at the end of 2.5, it remains Montreal 1, the Mets nothing. We want to remind you tonight, following Nightline, ABC Sports Monday Sports Night, and tonight is the night of the fight in Atlantic City between Jerry Cooney and Michael Spinks, and we'll have post-fight interviews and a report on that fight for you, along with an interview with Brian Bosworth, who was drafted, as you know, by the Seattle Seahawks the other day in the NFL supplemental draft, and contends he will not play for them. A couple of the features you'll be seeing tonight on Monday Sports Night following Nightline. Bottom of the 3rd inning, and Martinez takes a strike. Dennis, so many years in the American League, so he is not used to swinging a bat in anger, as reflected in a 3 for 32 career figure. And reflected on that swing. 0-2.
Oh, yes. That's why he enjoyed the American League. He didn't have to face a Dwight Gooden.
Easily and painlessly. 1 gone. That's Gooden's first strikeout.
It's like some of the hitters when we had a young outfielder by the name of Tom Chopay. He got 3 starts one year. He got Nolan Ryan and a no-hitter. He got a month later, he got Tiant, and the next month he got Gaylord with all the spit on every ball. And he came back, he said, this is unfair. 3 starts in 3 months. I think Dennis must feel the same way.
Casey Candell, strike. Some of you may have read about Candell it's been well noted in several feature stories. His mother once played professional baseball in a league in the Midwest in the 1950s. He hits a chopper, and it's going to be a tough play for Johnson, but Howard throws him out. Candell can run. Johnson having to wait for it to come down and getting off a strong throw to first to nail him on a bang-bang play for the second out.
Howard Johnson, as all infielders do, try to get on top of the ball when they throw it, but sometimes you don't have a chance to do that, and that's why he throws it from down there. So good play by Johnson.
Gets Candell for the second out, and Herm Winningham is the batter. And he chops one toward the middle. Tuffle goes out behind the line to backhand and then throws high. Tim has him with a good throw, even with Winningham's speed. But the Expos keep the inning going.
To me, that's an example of one guy runs a little bit better. You can see 9 times Gold Glove saves man on second situation. Not a good throw, though. And then again, not an easy play. You have to backpedal to the outfield, and you know you have to hurry. But of the last two respective players, Johnson, really, when you consider he had to throw from the side, the ball stayed straight. He made his play, Tuffle didn't.
Plus, on the rug, on a play like that, you can't come in and to your right. You've got to go back and to your right to make it doubly difficult.
Winningham gets an infield single, and Raines is the batter. Raines grounded out his first time up. 1-0 the count.
Also not a play you practice a lot in infield practice, but remember during the World Series how Ozzie Smith will have the coach hit those high choppers. He'll come in and practice making those plays. It's kind of a tough play to duplicate, though.
Winningham, who stole second, and that set up a run in the first inning, off to his lead at first with a count 1-0 on Raines. So Gooden has to keep an eye on him and drives him back. Winningham with 8 steals. Expos have some people who can run. Raines at the plate has 16 steals, and he missed a month. Mitch Webster, who's not in the lineup tonight, has 15.
This is one of the toughest situations for a pitcher. You know the guy on first can run. He's already shown you that earlier in the ball game, and then you have a guy at the plate that's hitting 367. If you cut down on your windup, you might take something off the pitch, so you can pay the price both ways.
There he goes. Good jump again. Carter's throw is there, but way too late. And again, Winningham taking advantage of Gooden's delivery, and he's in scoring position with 2 down.
Well, credit Gary Carter for not allowing Winningham to dictate what pitch he's going to throw or call for. It was a curveball, a very close pitch. And catchers are trained never to worry more about the guy on first, regardless of the speed, than they do about the guy with the stick in his hand, because he eventually, especially with 2 outs, is the guy who's going to hurt you.
2 balls, no strikes now on Raines with Wallach on deck. Montreal leading 1-0. Blocked by Carter. Winningham remains at second, and the count is 3-0.
Well, let me ask you a little further. Let's amplify it a little bit further. All right. If you're catching, and you got a guy like Winningham at first, don't you almost know if you throw a breaking ball that he's going to be able to steal? Especially with a guy like
but you don't know whether he's going or not. You can't dictate how you call a game by the speed of the runner at first base, regardless of who he is. If you're going to do that, go ahead and pitch out. If you're going to just throw the fastball. There are a lot of catchers that get caught up in that. They like to come out of the chute and show off their arm, but you can't allow that to happen.
He gets the green light, 3-0, and why not? He's the batting champion, but all it results in is a fly ball to Strawberry. And the Expos are done in the third. No runs, a hit. They strand Winningham at second. After 3, it's Montreal 1, New York 0. In Montreal, as we go to the 4th inning, the Mets and the Expos. Montreal on top 1-0. Again, the standings in the National League East at the start of play. Cardinals, who have just swept the Cubs over the weekend, on top. Cubs are 6 back in second. Montreal third by 6.5. And the Mets come in tonight 7.5 back of St. Louis in 4th place in the East. Keith Hernandez to lead off. Dennis Martinez starts him with a pitch missing away, and the count 1-0. Hernandez, Carter, and Strawberry in the 4th. Expos a run, 3 hits, and the Mets no runs, 1 hit. I guess that clicking sound is the new sound of the mid-'80s. That's Gary Carter in the on-deck circle with one of those bats where the weight shifts as you swing it in the on-deck circle, and it creates that sound. Perfect. Cue him. 2-1 the count. Drive you batty.
Literally.
3-1 the count on Hernandez.
Gutsy pitch, 2-1 pitch to a guy that walked 94 times last year. He's going to make you throw the ball over the plate. He has a lot of confidence in that curveball tonight, or anytime. Well, I know when you look at the percentages of baseball last year in the National League, when the first guy gets on, he scores 49% of the time. Key batter.
Grounded toward the hole and a base hit. So Hernandez is on, and for the first time in the game, the Mets have their leadoff man on. And Gary Carter comes to the plate. ABC's Monday Night Baseball is being brought to you by Michelob Light, who says you can't have it all. Gary Carter, his 9-game hitting streak on the line, grounded out in the 1st inning. Carter hitting .256.
Jim, I guess you can do a lot of things with numbers, but obviously the speed of the runner that gets on first has a lot to do with that. If you have, for instance, a guy like Raines at first, it may be above 49%. A guy like Hernandez who can't run, it's probably below 49%, even though you have the heart of the lineup up.
Well, of course, that's just an average percentage. But I think that they instill that in your mind over the years. You know, you always have to get the opposing pitcher out. You should always get the first batter out.
First pitch.
The first pitch is important, being ahead of the hitter. And obviously, if you throw the first pitch for a strike, you will be. And mentally, you almost, you have a letdown if the first batter does get on. Now, obviously, you're not going to give up because it happened many times, just about every pitcher that ever went out there. And if it didn't, you didn't pitch very long.
No balls, 2 strikes, the count on Carter. Hernandez at first base. Nobody out. 4th inning, 1-0 Montreal.
You're right in this situation. Carter, who's leading the Mets in double plays, hit into with 12, is the type of guy that can get you out of the inning, or at least 2 outs with 1 pitch. Martinez throwing a sinker all night. It's a ground ball. You should see that stat right there. So he has a propensity of hitting the ball on the ground. If he does and it's at somebody, we're going to see most likely a double play.
By the way, the National League record held by Ernie Lombardi. He grounded into 30 double plays.
And still made the Hall of Fame.
That's right. And rightly so, too. The schnoz.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we saw Jim Rice cut down a swing up in Boston last year. He took so much criticism 2 years ago. 36 double play ground up. The scouts are talking now, with only 4 home runs, 23 RBIs, that he's cut his swing down so much that it's cost him in the power situation, or in the power ability to hit home runs. So Carter, of course, is not one of these guys. He's going up there and he is not going to cut his swing down.
And Carter hits a fly ball to center field, where Herm Winningham camps underneath it to make the catch for the first out. Hernandez remains at first. We talked about the trials and tribulations of Darryl Strawberry last week. Here's how Dave Johnson views it.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the issue's over. It's forgotten. I just don't like to see a young ball player start coming late to the ballpark, and it lends me to believe that his off-the-field activities are taking priority to his game time. And when that happens, I'm going to do something about it. And the best way I know to do something about it is not really fine a guy, but it's take away playing time. And I hope I got a message to Darryl that he's too important to start having bad habits at this point in his career.
He hits a line drive to Brooks, and Hernandez is alert enough not to have strayed too far from first and is able to get back there. So again, Strawberry makes good contact. He hit one on the button in the second inning, but right at Candell and right, and now he lines out. So he is 0 for 2.
If you're a runner at first base, the reason you don't get doubled off on a line drive to the left side of the infield is because if the ball does get through, you're only going to second anyway. That's why you have to play the one base at a time type of base running. Now, a line drive to the second baseman or the first baseman, totally different story because you have third base on your mind, not second.
McReynolds lines one to center field, and Winningham comes up to make the catch, and that's that. So Hernandez gets on to lead things off, but is stranded at first. And after 3.5, it's Montreal 1, the Mets nothing.
The fans go home unhappy at Wrigley Field this afternoon. This is Corey McFerrin. Lee Smith throws this one away. Wild pitch, ninth inning. Glenn Wilson comes home to break up a 2-2 tie. Philly wins it 3-2.
Back in Montreal as we go to the bottom of the 4th inning. Tim Wallach to lead off, then Brooks, and then Galarraga, and that sign letting everybody know they missed Mr. Dawson in Montreal, but at least they got Raines back. We talked about it earlier. The Reardon trade has turned out to be, at least at this point, a decent one, a better than decent one for Montreal. And the Expos are in contention as it's driven to deep right field, and Strawberry goes back and can't make the catch as it bounces back toward Dykstra. And Wallach winds up at second with a double.
Tell you the thing about Tim Wallach, and Dwight Gooden has had very good success with Wallach. Coming into this game, he was 3 for 26. But Wallach has a very unusual swing, which makes him a low ball hitter. He's a right-handed hitter, but he has a left-hander swing in that he has the loop in the swing. Consequently, he's very dangerous on a ball down and away, and that's where this ball was. And he drives it right above the glove of Strawberry. Darryl, full extension, trying to act like his compatriot from L.A., Eric Davis. What a leaper he is.
Who took 2 home runs away from Jack Clark on successive nights in Cincinnati a couple of weeks back. That's hit through the middle, backhanded by Tuffle. Off-balance throw is not nearly in time. It rolls into the dugout. And it's 2-0 Montreal. Brooks will get an infield hit, and then Tuffle will get a throwing error. No run batted in, and it's 2-0 Expos.
Well, Gary Carter is thinking if I back up first base, that leaves home plate unguarded. The way to beat that play is to remind your third baseman with a runner at second that on a ball hit to the right, I'm going to back up the play. The third baseman covers home, and that would prevent this type of error. You have to be very alert, however, and anticipate a play like that, especially in a 2-out situation. It's no outs here, but in a 2-out situation, Carter could have prevented that, but you don't prevent it unless you anticipate it.
And Montreal winds up with a run, a man at second and nobody out, and Andres Galarraga, who singled in the second inning at the plate, taking a strike on the outside corner. 0-1. We mentioned before, Tuffle's been hot with the bat since replacing, or not replacing Backman really, but in essence playing every day now because of the injury to Backman, but he's also made 3 errors in the 6 games. 0-2 the count.
A difficult error. Mainly, I don't think he should have thrown the ball. Brooks, unselfish hitting, hit the ball behind the runner, getting him over to third base. Tuffle does not really have a play. I think Hernandez, as we said, has 9 Gold Gloves. if he thought the ball would stay down, and it did because of the softness around the bases here on the artificial turf, he would have gone out and caught the ball. No chance of getting Brooks, but not really thinking. No chance at all to get him at first base. One of those situations, if you're Dwight Gooden, you're a little frustrated. Pretty good pitch to Wallace, even though it's a low ball to a low ball hitter. We talked about how the ball carries. I think without the roof, that ball is just a normal fly ball, or ball that Strawberry hauls in at the warning track. But you have to sometimes pitch with good things happening, as the 13 runs he got in Wrigley Field, and through the difficult parts. And right now it looks like he is not pitching, he is throwing.
2-2 the count. With or without the roof, the question is, what about the baseball this year? Everybody's saying that it's easier to hit here for a number of reasons. No shadows to worry about and the rest of it, and it's a lot warmer. But also the baseball itself has to come into play this year.
I think you said it best when you talked to Keith Hernandez. 2 home runs to center, 2 to left. He said that's good for a strikeout, as we saw an overhand yacker.
And Galarraga gone for Gooden's second strikeout.
I don't know if he knows it's high, but I don't think he gets much of an idea because he gives up. Look at it. I'll tell you what, if you're going to get a high pitch in the National League, it's going to be that, because Lee Wire had plenty of time to watch it all the way into the catcher's glove, as did Galarraga.
Well, the ball's certainly carrying better in this park. There have been 53 home runs hit in this park so far this year, and only 98 hit here last year.
Law takes outside, ball 1.
That was the second lowest total in the National League. Busch Stadium in St. Louis had 90 home runs hit there.
And this is only home game number 29 for Montreal. So they're really not even that close to halfway. It certainly carried yesterday from Mike Schmidt. He had 3 home runs in Olympic Stadium, the second of which was his 2000th career hit. And then I don't know how many of you noticed, he came out of the game. He would have come up again in the 9th inning, but he's just off the disabled list. He had 3 home runs, and then when his spot came up in the 9th, there was Rick Shue. Of course, Mike already has a 4 home run game, so what's another, right?
Did it April 17th, 1976. And in that game, the Phillies trailed 13-2 with 1 out and nobody on in the 6th inning. The wind blowing out at Wrigley, and the Phillies ended up winning that game 18-16. Schmidt hit the first home run off Rick Russell, and the last home run off Paul Russell, his brother.
2-1 pitch. Fouled away. Of course, Tim McCarver knows that because you were, I assume, in that game.
I was there. I pitch hit in the 10th inning. I think the score was 17-16 at the time.
Oh, I thought you were calling the pitches when it was 13-2. What did you say?
No, the fact of the matter was I was the 25th guy on the roster. That's why I hit when it was a 17-16 ball game. I mean, if you got to wait to pinch hit in a 17-16 game, you're not going to get many calls.
But you had to go down to interpret for Carlton in the press conference, right?
That's exactly right.
2-2 pitch is outside, ball 3. 3-2 on Law.
You mentioned the ball earlier, Al, and I don't know whether the ball's juiced up, but I would think that those opponents of the ball being juiced up, those that believe that it's just a figment of others' imagination, ought to respect the genuinely intelligent baseball people who do think it's juiced up. It's not a handful of people that think that. Players think it, managers think it, coaches think it. I'm not issuing a strong commentary one way or the other.
Well, it's a subject that's come up so often through the years, you've had a tendency to discount it, but you're right. I think it's become almost unanimous now. There are very few who play the game or who are around the game on an everyday basis who are disputing it.
That's right.
To right field and toward the corner, and Strawberry gets there and makes the catch for the out. And Brooks gets back to second, and if Hubie had been more alert, that's the perfect play to tag up at second and advance to third, but he didn't.
Of course, if he does go into third base, that somewhat takes away the curveball from Gooden. If you have a man on third with 2 outs versus a man on second, you're a little apt to be able to kind of throw that curveball and relax. It makes a big difference.
Well, you can't go halfway on a play like that. What you do, you go about a third of the way, about 7 or 8 strides off of second. And if the outfielder catches the ball, the momentum of his catching the ball is going to carry him toward the wall. That's going to give you a chance to go back, tag up, and walk to third base. If you're halfway, you're too far to get back and tag up.
And that's where he was. And so he is still at second with 2 down. And it brings up Jeff Reed, the catcher. Look at the Jugs gun and the readout. I assume that says 95. Get a new battery in the gun.
We might see a pitch around here with Dennis Martinez, the opposing pitcher, on deck. They're already trailing 2-0. Even though we talked about Reed's inability to hit National League pitching, 0 for his last 15. You have almost a sure out if you make quality pitches on deck. You don't want to give up another run.
2-0 the count on Reed.
It's one of those situations you could almost think, if you're a pitcher, that he's going to go up there and look for the curveball. Of course, the one thing that Gooden really separates him from a lot of other people is both his fastball and curveball, as far as I'm concerned, are equals. You can look for it and still not hit it. Not too many pitchers that I've ever seen in 20-some years you can say that.
And I'm sure Jeff Reed will embellish on that story later on, that Dwight Gooden in his prime pitched around him
when he was hitting $1.25. And that's his average right now, folks. 125.
Hopefully that will not be his highlight of his career. Remember when I was hitting 125 in Montreal and he pitched around me?
Now Martinez comes to the plate. Montreal on top 2-0. Martinez struck out in his only appearance tonight. He's 0 for 3 this season and 3 for 33. 111 for his career.
Al, you mentioned the trade earlier, the Neil Heaton, the 2 main characters, Neil Heaton for Jeff Reardon. But the Expos got another fine young left-handed pitcher in that deal named Yorkis Perez. He's 19 years old. He's a left-hander, and he's been pitching 3 years of professional ball. He was 5-1 at the Class A competition, and he's just been moved up to Jacksonville. And they are very impressed. It's not too often you get a good young left-handed pitcher.
And there's another pretty good young pitcher by the name of Al Cardwell who was involved in that deal as well.
Well, Buck Rogers was talking about Yorkis already won a game at AA level, so he's hoping that maybe in the middle of 1988 he will be here in Montreal. Time will tell, of course.
Actually, his name is Al Cardwood. I was thinking of Don Cardwell.
Don Cardwell could hit. And he pitched a no-hitter at Wrigley Field in the early 60s. Right. The year escapes me, but as a matter of fact, Don Cardwell was a member of the 1969 Met World Championship team.
Pitching a no-hitter at Wrigley Field. I think Bert Hooton pitched one there as well.
Against the team on which I played. Second game of the season in 1972, the Phillies. I was hitless in that game.
1-2 the count. How many no-hitters have you caught? 2. By
Rick Wise, who probably had the greatest game.
I was there that night, sure.
Yeah, 1971. He hit 2 two-run homers and pitched a no-hitter.
Yep.
Taking care of business. 2
home runs in a game. Exactly.
And then Bill Stoneman up here. It was the first no-hitter pitched out of the country in 1972 against the Mets.
One of 2 no-hitters Stoneman pitched in his career. In the air to right field. And a busy inning for Darryl Strawberry. 2 putouts and a near catch on Wallach's drive, but Montreal gets a run to pad its lead. It's 2-0, and we'll be back after this message and news headlines from your local station.
Two 7-game winners dueling at the Astrodome tonight. The Astros' Mike Scott, the Reds' Bill Gullickson here. Scott punches out Tracy Jones, his 8th K in 5 innings. Reds nothing, Astros nothing in the 5th.
And other scores, Philadelphia beat Chicago 3-2. Pittsburgh and St. Louis at Busch Stadium 1-1 in the 4th. We just told you about Cincy and Houston. No score at the Astrodome. Here, 2-0 Montreal, 5th inning. And Howard Johnson up there to bunt. Takes low for a ball. In the American League, the Yankees lead Baltimore 6-2 in the 6th. Detroit leading the Blue Jays 2-1. Toronto had its 11-game winning streak snapped yesterday. Minnesota leading Milwaukee 4-0 in the 4th inning. Oakland out in front of KC 2-1 in the 5th. The other 2 games later. Fly ball to left center field. Tim Raines is there to put it away, and Johnson is out number 1. 1 gone here in the 5th inning, and that will bring up Rafael Santana. Funny thing about Santana, here's a guy, he's a shortstop from the Dominican, so you naturally assume he's got a tremendous amount of speed. In his entire career, he has 1 steal.
That's in almost 1,400 at bats. But we mentioned earlier how much better the Mets are when he's playing shortstop. They're 3-12 without him at short, and 28-17 when he's in the lineup.
Very valuable man.
In talking to Davey last year, talking about Davey Johnson, he said, I said, are there any weaknesses that you think you have in your ball club? And he said, yeah, when I take Santana out late in the game to pinch hit for him, I don't have anybody else to put in. And we're a poor defensive club late in the game, and a lot of times that's how you're going to win ball games. And I don't see anybody that they have really replaced him with, or a utility guy that really can take his place and play as well defensively. And even though he's hitting well, they still keep pinch hitting for him.
2-1 the count. Sam Palazzo, right of the screen, the Mets third base coach, last year managing at Tidewater. And that's the route that Davey Johnson took. Tidewater to New York anyway. Davey didn't have to stop at third on the way. 2-2 the count on Santana.
Dennis Martinez, 32. When he came up, a cross-seam fastball. The ball took off in the strike zone. Tonight, he took a look at that last pitch. Good sinker. He's gotten behind, but he's been able to make quality pitches.
Wallach fields on a hop. Gets him for the out. 2 down. And Dwight Gooden will be coming to the plate. So Martinez allowing just 2 singles. One by McReynolds in the 2nd, the other by Hernandez in the 4th. He has walked 1, struck out 2. And all of the parts coming together right now for Buck Rogers and the Montreal Expos.
Well, he explained this team. He said, you know, this is a team of projects. And Dennis is one of his projects. He was very disappointed when Dennis chose to be a free agent. As I said earlier, he pitched fairly well at the end of last season, but when he first came over here, I think that might have attributed to the 3-6 record. He had some shoulder problems when he was with the Orioles and was sent to Rochester for rehab. He wanted him, but they could not come to terms until it really turned out just last week.
1-1 the count. And Rogers has done a real nice job working with this group, and it had to be a tortuous winter for Rogers. He watched his front office say goodbye to Dawson, say goodbye at least temporarily to Raines, and trade Jeff Reardon. And I asked Rogers what his winter was like, and he said, I didn't sleep very much.
I'll tell you, one of the best tributes I've heard about Buck Rogers as a manager came from an extra man, Terry Francona of the Cincinnati Reds.
Gooden grounds one down to Brooks, and he gets him for the out. And we'll find out what Francona had to say when we come back in the bottom of the 5th. Montreal 2 and the Mets nothing. Now, if you're wondering how this roof is held in place, that's what it looks like outside Olympic Stadium in Montreal. Erected in the early 70s and opened in time to host the 1976 Summer Olympics. The team moved in here in '77, and through the years they kept talking about the roof, and it was in storage in France, and all of the problems they went through, and yada yada yada. And then finally in 1987, some 10 years after the ballpark opens, we've got a dome, but no air conditioning yet. Bottom of the 5th inning as Candell fouls it away, and the count 1-1.
Something I can't understand is the material out of which it's made. What's it called? Kevlar?
Kevlar.
Kevlar.
K-E-V-L-A-R.
Sounds like a Greek cookie.
It's made out of the same material that they make bulletproof vests out of. That is strange. I can't figure that out. What's going on?
Well, with a lively ball, I guess they planned ahead.
Right.
A lot of shots hit there.
Yes.
Yeah. Case Kingman comes back here, right?
Moon shots.
Yeah. Kingman once hit the rim at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. That's grounded to the left side and surrounded by Santana, whose high throw is pulled down by Hernandez. One gone. Winningham coming to the plate. And what was it that Francona said about Buck Rogers?
Terry Francona. You talk about a credible source, because he was an extra man here with Montreal. He didn't play regularly. And when a player goes to another club and doesn't play regularly, when he thinks he should have and still says the manager was a good manager, then that's a pretty good source.
Meanwhile, next Monday, Montreal again featured. Some of you will see their game with the Cardinals, or Kansas City against Oakland next week on Monday Night Baseball. Winningham fouling it away, and the count is 0-1.
Well, Brooks also talked about what a great job Buck Rogers has done, mainly because he said this is a team of basically role players. So I told Buck, I said, you know, you're getting glowing tributes from your shortstop. And he said, well, I have had to manipulate him. I said, well, that is why you're here. I mean, just think, what if you couldn't do it?
I've seen graphics broken down, but Steve Hurd adding a new twist right there. The United States mark and the south of the border mark, or the south of the border and north of the border figures.
Well, that all happened back in '84. He came up here, went 5 for 10. He deked him into trading him up here, and then he only hits in the United States until this year.
Outside of the count, 1-2.
He said the best thing that ever happened to him was getting sent out last year. He was beaten out in the spring training of '86, as you look at the numbers, by Mitch Webster.
But what about the Dominican during winter ball? As it gets by, Johnson goes down the line, and the Criminals will have to track it down. And Herm pulls in at second. And they will rule it a double. Winningham's second hit. Winningham had an 11-game hitting streak snapped yesterday. He got into the game late, only came up once and was 0 for 1, but he's starting a new streak tonight.
Once again, a play dictated by the softness of the dirt here off the artificial turf. Winningham right away. You see Ronnie Hansen waving him in to second base. Makes it easily. We saw the throw from Tuffle earlier. Didn't really figure in the scoring. Well, it did because Wallach scored, but eventually the runner that went to second didn't score. But right there, that's a very difficult play with 2 strikes. Johnson's back. He has to come to his right. He figures he'll just play the bounce and doesn't get one into the corner for a double.
Tim Raines now, who is 0 for 2, comes up hitting .362. Raines hit the ball hard yesterday, but wound up going 0 for 5 against the Phillies. So Tim in a little mini slump here.
Well, I asked him how he stayed in shape till May 1st, till he signed. He said, I worked out with high school down in Palmetto. I got over 200 swings a day, much more than I would have got in spring training, but no live pitching. Did not hit off a live pitcher really until he came up here. He had a batting cage down there, lifted Nautilus and things like that. Doesn't appear to have hurt him.
Takes a strike at the count, 1-1.
I'll say.
Tim, how does Gooden look to you tonight compared to the way he looked a week ago Friday?
He looks about right, even though his strikeouts are not up. He had 5 strikeouts in his first outing in 6 2/3, 10 last Wednesday, and only 2 tonight.
swing strike, and the count 1-2.
Of course, a lot of that has to do with the lineup that you're facing. The Montreal Expos, more of a contact team, have a lot of guys that do not strike out a lot. But you could go down the litany of stats about Dwight Gooden, but one of the most shocking things that really stands out, it comes glaring at you, is that he struck out 10 or more in 32 of 102 ball games, including tonight. Almost a third of the time he's reached double figures in strikeouts. That's remarkable.
And he takes care of Tim Raines here. So Raines is now 0 for 3 tonight and 0 for 8 in the last 36 hours. Strikeout number 3 for Gooden, and it brings up Wallach.
Well, this is the curveball he had the first time he pitched this year against the Pirates. And as Tim said, only 5 strikeouts. I think the most impressive thing about his second start in Wrigley Field is you talked about the 32 times with 10 or more strikeouts. He's done it 5 times where he's had 10 or more strikeouts and no walks, so he had excellent control.
Now, just to put it in perspective, that's perfect. 32 of 102, and then there was Palmer. I would have thought you had more
remarkable.
than that. Yeah, I would have guessed if somebody
13?
said how many times, I would have thought in the 40s probably.
No. I was not a strikeout pitcher. I saved, well, I have 2 more of those in the playoffs when it counted.
Yeah.
That really is remarkable. I mean, here's Gooden, 22 years old, and has 2.5 times as many double-figure strikeout games than you had, and you won 268 games.
Well, he may be better than I am. Did you ever take that in consideration? Now, also, I think another thing to look at is that 3 times I struck out 9 guys. No, I'm only kidding. I think you guys are going. We can turn statistics any way you want to. So 93 times I struck out 9 batters.
Oh, you flirted with 10
yes.
quite a bit of time.
No, but then, you know, they put you up in graphics if you do that kind of stuff.
2-0 pitches a strike, and the count 2-1.
It's like winning 20 games, hitting 300. If you strike out 10 or more guys, they expect you to do it every time. I just stopped at 9. And then went to the high rider, had him hit fly balls, and everything was fine.
That's the old Billy Lowe's theory.
Tim, the deal was, as you well know, I mean, how many times did Palmer tell Weaver in the 8th inning, come and get me? You know, the older nerve is acting up.
Probably with 9 strikeouts all the time, too.
Right. 3-1 the count on Wallach.
Right. Give the other team a chance. Bring in somebody else. You know, I was a nice guy. If I had that killer instinct, I would have been much better. That, and I hadn't torn my rotator cuff when I was 20. The amazing thing is that Gooden, and we talked a little about this today, Tim, he has such a graceful motion. He uses his whole body, tremendous drive with his right leg, follows through, doesn't throw with an upper body very much like I did. Wraps his arm a little bit at the end of his delivery, but very fluid.
He's behind the Wallach, 3-1. Winningham at second with 2 down. And it's hit down the line, foul, and the count is 3-2.
I'll tell you, Jim, and this is an amazing stat given to me by Steve Hurt. You had 13 more times that you reached double figures, 13 more than Joe Niekro. 482 major league appearances, and he has never struck out 10 or more batters. It's remarkable.
Never would have guessed that.
Joe, of course, doing real well with the surprising Minnesota Twins. He's 2-0.
Minnesota on top of the American League West. The way his knuckleball is fluttering in that dome, he's liable to get his 10 one of these days.
Maybe.
Tom Kelly, the manager of the Twins, all the players said they really look forward to playing for him. And in talking about Joe Niekro, took him out after 6 innings, brought in Baron Gare. Said his knuckleball wasn't knuckling. Let's get you out of there. You did a nice job, and they win the ball game.
Wallach fouls one right off his foot, and it's still 3-2. And of all the guys to writhe in agony, this is probably the last one that Buck Rogers would like to see right now, because Rogers was saying before the game, talking about all of the contributions made by various people, he said the key guy has been Wallach.
Well, Tim had a tough year last year. Let's see, he fractures his little toe coming out of spring training. Then he sprains his wrist. You take another look at it. You can see the protection on his left. Really looks like his shin. Pull hitter. A lot of times you turn on that ball just there. You see it hit the inside of the ankle. right where the protection isn't. And then he fractured his left foot at the end of the season. So 86 was a tough year. You saw the numbers, 9 home runs, 54 RBIs already this year. Healthy Tim Wallach is an impressive player. Really one of 3 guys in the last 5 years that has averaged 17 home runs over 78 RBIs. The other 2 guys are Mike Schmidt and Dale Murphy. Good company.
Pretty elite company. Tell you, a lot of times you can tell what kind of a hitter. I know this sounds strange, as that ethyl chloride is applied, and all that does is make it hurt worse.
It'd be interesting if he hands the shin guard to the trainer and says it didn't help. You take it. Slows me down. Nope. Move it over.
Yeah, he's going to reposition that thing right now.
I was going to say, a lot of guys who wear that more than often are low ball hitters, because they get a lot of balls down there. They drive them hard and with authority, and that's why they have to wear protection on the shins and the foot area.
And also, you see Buck Rogers talking to him when he broke his ankle, fractured it in September. He played 2 weeks afterwards until he said, oh, well, you know, it still bothered me. Let's go take some x-rays. So he is a gamer.
So Rogers coming back to the dugout as Wallach gets ready to stand in again with a count 3-2, and Brooks on deck. 2 out. We're in the bottom of the 5th inning. Montreal leading 2-0. Winningham, the runner at second. And he loses him. So he draws the walk, and Brooks comes to the plate. Hubie is 1 for 2. You know, when we saw Buck Rogers, the one thing I think that makes Rogers unique, he wears a watch. He's always worn a watch, and it's a habit he picked up, or an idiosyncrasy, from Bill Rigney, who was his mentor. Remember, Rig always used to wear a watch? And in 1976, when Rig came out of retirement to manage the Giants, the team was a terrible team. They were undergoing a long losing streak, and I said to Rig, hey, just for luck, why don't you take the watch off tonight? And he said, are you kidding? With this team, I never want to miss last call. And that was it. And that was the end of Rigney's career at the end of the 76 season. Want to send our best to Rig, by the way, who had some hip surgery recently and recovering out in California.
One of the grand gentlemen of this game.
Terrific. Terrific. Brooks hits it down the line toward the corner in right field, and it's a fair ball and bouncing away from Strawberry. Winningham comes in to score. Wallach, Gimpy, Foot, and all comes in to score on a triple by Brooks.
Well, somebody's got to be there. Darryl Strawberry cannot be expected to go to the fence and then track it down into right center field. Tim Tuffle, the second baseman, really has nothing else whatsoever to do but to go toward the ball. Timmy doesn't do that, and watch how far Strawberry has to run as a result. Hernandez is the cutoff man, very unusually, as the first baseman, so Tuffle's not used as the cutoff man, but in effect he should be out there. Ball just inside the line.
And very close to being a foul ball. Just fair. Another look. And it appeared that it hit in foul territory as we looked at it from that angle. 1-1 the count.
As you would think Darryl Strawberry, even though he's running towards the ball, would have had a better view than anybody, and he did not argue. Very close.
Probably Hernandez could have had the better view because he's not going after the ball. But somebody should be in right center field to track the ball down once it hits the fence.
Take another look right now. This is interesting. The ball, to be fair, obviously has to hit to the left of the white line.
Might have hit on the line.
Yeah, just barely. Might have kissed it, but it doesn't look like it in that angle.
Speaking of angles, the angle of that wall dictated that the ball's going to come back toward the second base position. Not being too tough on Timmy, but somebody's got to be there.
I know one thing, McEnroe would have screamed about that call. 1-2 pitch is inside of the count, 2-2 on Galarraga.
You have Tim Wallach running from first base. Tim Wallach just got plunked on the ankle, so he's not going to get around that quickly, get around the bases that quickly. So if somebody is out there to field the ball, and we think Tuffle is the guy, there could have been a play on him at the plate.
3-2 the count. Brooks winds up getting credit for a 2-run triple. Montreal on top 4-0. Gooden has yielded 7 hits. He has walked 3, struck out 3. And the 3-2 to Galarraga got him looking. Again, second time he has struck out looking. And the Expos are gone in the 5th inning, but they add a couple, lead 4-0 as we go to the 6th, and we'll be back after this word from your local station. Another look right now on a play that was very close. Is it foul or is it fair? There was no argument.
Looked to me like it disappeared into the white, which would mean that it hit the white line.
Dykstra starts the 6th inning with a soft fly ball to Raines. 1 away. And Davy Johnson would have argued because he had a pretty good angle. The Mets dugout is back of third, so he had a pretty clear view of the proceedings in right field.
Oh, he probably couldn't believe the ball went that far.
Yeah.
It was a fastball up and away. Brooks just kind of lunged for it, and he can't hit with some power, but the ball went off the top of the wall, or at least the middle of it.
One gone in the 6th inning, and Tim Tuffle is the batter. He's walked and flied out. Dennis Martinez. 2-hit shutout through 5 as Tuffle hits one foul, and the count is 0-1. Martinez, remember, allowed only 3 hits in 7 innings against the Pirates the other day. 2 in 5, so Buck Rogers has to be ecstatic.
Well, this is one of the projects he talked about, giving him a chance. As I said, great work ethics, but you have to remember that does have those concentration lapses. Has not had them tonight.
1-1 the count.
But what he's been able to do a little bit more, even though Gooden in the last inning has been able to do it, is to get a couple of pitches over. Almost every Mets hitter, he's thrown him enough breaking balls and enough fastballs to establish 2 pitches. Only until the last inning has Dwight really had that good curveball, and he hasn't had command of his fastball all night. So one guy's been able to pitch, and the other one has been more of a thrower, at least in my opinion.
1-2. And that man's been doing the throwing.
Really hasn't pitched that poorly. Been some tough breaks, balls hit not that hard, but that's part of the game. And I don't really think he would, if you said to this point, are you happy with the way you've pitched tonight, you'd say no.
Nice stop at third, and he gets him. And that's Vance Law, who has gone into play third, as Wallach had to come out of the game. And Tim Tuffle is now hurt. Of all things, appeared to be reaching for his hamstring, the injury that shelled Wally Backman, with whom he had been platooning. And the Expos, meanwhile, with Wallach coming out of the game, have Law at third and Candell at second, and Vance is tested right away.
Oh, fine play by Law. Not only did he make a nice play, but he got to his feet and threw a strike to Galarraga at first base. And now Tuffle's hurt. Backman's on the shelf with a pulled hamstring. And now Tim Tuffle appears to be hurt.
So 2 down. And Tuffle heading back toward the clubhouse as Hernandez comes up. And Keith hits it to center, and Whittingham has trouble and drops the ball. Hernandez on his way to second. Here's the throw. It is not in time. Hernandez hitting a bullet to center field. Whittingham appeared to have it gauged, and then it sailed on him. And it's an error. A two-base error on Herm.
You talk to all outfielders and they say sometimes, especially for a center field, the ball hit right at you is the most difficult. It knuckles. Winningham, as we said, find the defensive center fielder just doesn't make that play. Of course, from up here, you can't tell whether he lost it. The ball was hit hard. It should have been an out.
Now Carter comes to the plate. Gary with a 9-game hitting streak, but hitless tonight. He is 0 for 2. We'll get a report on Wallach for you. And also we'll see about Tuffle. The Expos right now have Law moving to third from second. Candell has come in from second base or from right field to play second. And Mitch Webster is in the game in right. And that means Webster is hitting in the cleanup spot. Two and on the count.
Another look. Right there, it keeps the ball from being a triple, even though Hernandez doesn't run, but it's a ball that he normally catches. The ball was hit awfully hard. It might have taken off, so. But that's why you're out there, and as I said, that's why he usually, the play he's going to make easily. We'll respect the 2-0 changeup.
With a 4-run lead.
4-0 Montreal. We're in the 6th inning.
Well, it's a nervy pitch, but when you get it over, it does make Carter have something else to look for. Again, some respect. Carter's the type of guy, though, even though he's been slumping, he does have hasn't been hit with that much power, can make the game 4-2 with one swing. So the 2-0 fastball is probably the pitch he's looking for. Throw him something else, you get it over, you're going to be that much more effective.
High fly ball to left field. Tim Raines with the easy play, and so the error by Winningham does no damage. No runs, no hits, an error, and a man left on. At the end of 5 1/2 at Olympic Stadium, it's Montreal 4 and the Mets nothing. Back in Montreal, Al Michaels along with Jim Palmer and Tim McCarver. Another look at Herm Winningham.
He's had a bad night. That's the third error he's made on the same ball.
And we thank you for the I guess they didn't have enough room for Palmer's name.
No, they just.
Craig Janoff saying that's your on camera for the night, Jim. It's only a queen size sheet. That was the problem. Bottom of the 6th inning. Vance Law to lead things off.
Being a big guy, I can only relate to king size beds, Al.
I got you.
I figured you would.
Grounded to short. Santana throws out Law. Meanwhile, at second base, Billy Allman is taken over for the Mets, and so we'll check on Tim Tuffle, who had to leave the game. Allman recently picked up from Pittsburgh, and there he is. One gone. Jeff Reed is the batter. Detroit beats Toronto 2-1. Second loss in a row for the Blue Jays. Terrell over Key. Reed at the plate. Strike. I knew we were in trouble when Palmer referred to, was it Winningham, as diminutive? I mean, is 5'11" diminutive, Tim?
But he plays smaller. You don't understand that. When you were down in the trenches, as was I, before the game, he looked about 5'9". Your size.
Fouled away.
Well,
the count 1-2.
Yeah, I'll tell you, from the way you pitched, I would imagine that perspective made a lot of hitters look smaller than they really were, because you were a stand-up type of pitcher, as opposed to a guy like Dwight Gooden, who uses his back leg, and a guy who's in this ballpark tonight who used his back leg better than anybody, and that's Tom Seaver.
Sure. 1 ball, 2 strikes the count. By the way, with Seaver, are the Mets still thinking about having Tom in the rotation, or at least getting a start by the end of the month?
As a matter of fact, Rick Aguilera, who is on the disabled list, and Tom will have a simulated game at 2:30 tomorrow afternoon. Tom went down to Tidewater. He started the exhibition game on Thursday. He worked 2 1/3 innings and gave up 7 runs, and he was genuinely embarrassed. Davey Johnson said it's no big deal. Get your work in, throw 60 or 70 pitches. But Tom was genuinely upset about that. There's number 41.
At age 42. Has to wear those comfortable shoes when you get a little bit long in the tooth, you know. 2-2 the count.
But really, when you talk about Tom, you and Tom, both right-handed, both great right-handed pitchers, Jim, seriously. But 2 different pitchers in that you were straight up more, and Tom dragging that right leg.
Well, that's why he's been able to pitch as long as he has been, as effectively as he's been able to, and also stay away from shoulder and really elbow problems, because he does have the perfect compact delivery using the total body. Dwight Gooden, very much like that for a tall guy. I mean, Gooden, Seaver is, what, about 6 feet, 6'1"? Gooden almost 6'4". So maybe he uses his leverage a little bit more, but does have a lot of thrust from his right leg when he pushes off.
I think it's interesting the influence that Tom Seaver had on that whole staff back in 1968 and 9 and 70.
Reed takes a call, 3rd strike, and so Jeff goes down. Gooden has his 4th strikeout. And another look at Tom. You saw a whole bunch of Seaver clones coming up. Craig Swan is the first guy who comes to mind for me.
Of course, Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan, of course, and obviously still pitching, the all-time strikeout leader. Jerry Koosman pitched till he was 42. Tug McGraw pitched till he was 39. And I would think that a lot of the pitchers that pitched on the staff with the Orioles more or less emulated you, Jim.
I would like to think they did, but I don't think from a style point. It just seemed, if you looked at the Mets from that ilk, Rube Walker, who was a catcher, who was a pitching coach, it's almost like he said, okay, all the Mets pitchers are going to throw this way. And I think that's why you've seen Ryan be able to pitch really to 40 years of age and be able to throw with a velocity. The one thing that impressed me about Tom Seaver last year is he still has good velocity. He can give you 6 or 7 innings. Whether he'll be able to do that this year is another thing. Accelerated spring training, only through maybe for the last 3 weeks. Tough.
Martinez takes a call, 3rd strike, and so Dwight Gooden has his first 1-2-3 inning. It comes in the 6th, and we go to the 7th with Montreal leading the Mets 4-0. Back in Montreal, Jim Palmer spent his whole career in the American League, so he never pitched here. Did you realize, though, Jim, that Tim McCarver played here, and not only played here, if I am not mistaken, didn't you play about 6 or 7 games at 3rd base for the Expos in 1972?
I most certainly did, and about 6 or 7 in left field, and that project was Gene Mock was the manager, as a matter of fact, and that project didn't last long.
Is that where his nickname Little Genius came from? With or without with or without the catcher's bird?
That proved that he was not a little genius during that period, putting me at 3rd base.
Jimmy, I always wondered about one thing. Everybody said, you know, you had such a great influence and working relationship with Carlton, and yet you were traded in the middle of that incredible Carlton season when he won 27.
Actually, he was 1 game under 500 when I was traded. He was 6-7, and John Bateman caught the majority of his games, and Lefty won 15 in a row that year.
Wound up winning 27 games for a team that won a total of 59. 7th inning, Strawberry has flied out and lined out. He's hit the ball hard twice, but for naught. He'll be followed by McReynolds and Johnson. It's 4-0 Montreal. Trying to remember back, it had to be John Bacabella who was the catcher for Montreal at the time.
Over at Parc Jarry.
Parc Jarry. That's the way the PA announcer used to announce Bacabella coming to the plate. John Bacabella. And who was it? Terry Humphrey?
Yes.
Was the other catcher?
Mike Marshall in relief.
Down the line in left field and out of play. Was Coco LeBoy on the team at that time?
No, he wasn't. I played with the Cardinals in the minor leagues with Coco. Actually, not in the minor leagues, in spring training. But Coco was a drafted player by the expansion Expos in 1969.
Some of the great names in the Expo past. Mac Jones, Jim Mudcat Grant was their first ever opening day pitcher. And Darryl Strawberry gets rung up. Strikeout number 3 for Martinez. The report, meanwhile, on Tim Tuffle's strained left hamstring. That's why he's out of the game.
Well, they've already lost one second baseman, Wally Backman, with a strained hamstring, so they have to be fairly disappointed. Tuffle, as we've seen tonight, often maligned for his defensive liabilities. You talked about maybe not really. I doubt if he knows, even though he's been playing for 4 or 5 years, that he maybe should go down the right field line.
That's hit by Law and down the line in left field. Raines over to cut it off, and McReynolds is on his way to second, and Kevin in there with a double. And that's the first extra base hit off Martinez. So McReynolds a double with 1 gone in the 7th inning, and Johnson will be the batter.
Martinez tries to come inside on McReynolds. That's where the National League tries to pitch Kevin. And Kevin's so strong, he just fists it to left field and would have had a double had Tim Raines not bobbled that ball.
Now Johnson is 0 for 2 as he climbs in, batting .245. Funny, thinking about Seaver, and we're talking about the Expos, it points up how long Tom has been around. The Expos are in their 19th season now. They were born in '69. The first ever game for Montreal was in Shea Stadium in New York on April 8th, '69, and the pitcher, Tom Seaver. And the first pitch in an Expo game in history was Seaver delivering to Maury Wills. 0-2.
Who was traded that year along with Manny Mota for Ron Fairley and I believe Bob Bailey, both coming to the Expos. I played in the first game in this ballpark, and Dow Maxfield hit his only Grand Slam home run to right center field at Parc Jarry. A game in which the Cardinals lost 8-7.
Parc Jarry.
Dow Maxfield now, of course, the general manager of the St. Louis Cardinals.
That's grounded foul. Funny, they won their home opener 8-7, and they won that game at Shea Stadium 11-10. Grant started, but he was gone by the second, and Seaver was gone early. Final score in New York tonight: the Yankees beat Baltimore 9-2, and Tommy John, at the age of 44, is now 7-2. And with Toronto losing, the Yankees are now 2 back. Oh, 0-2 on Johnson. 1-2 now. Four runs, 7 hits, and an error for Montreal. 0-3-1 for New York. And activity in the Mets bullpen now, with Jeff Innes throwing. He worked yesterday briefly in Pittsburgh. Popped out of play. 1-2. Gooden and Stottlemyre. And it's been, well, you'd have to say the weakest of his 3 outings so far.
Oh, it's been a somewhat disappointing night, but if you go back and look at his other 2 games, he's always handled Pittsburgh well, and the Cubs are a free swinging type of ball club, which I know is somewhat of, I know I didn't strike out 10 guys that often, but I kind of consider myself a power pitcher. You like the kind of team that comes up similar to Toronto's ball club, that comes up and aggressively goes up. As you said, this is a much different team. Contact, you're not going to strike out that much. They put the ball in play, and they've hit the ball all over the ballpark.
I think one of the adjustments the National League made last year, as opposed to 1985, is they started laying off the high fastball from Gooden. That added to his being 17-6.
And also tonight, he wasn't even close. I mean, in other words, he wasn't around the belt. He was up at the letters, which is a ball all the time.
Johnson loops it down the line, hooking foul, and still a ball and 2 strikes on Howard with Santana on deck.
I think you pointed it out early, Jim, that Dwight was falling behind the hitters. And when a pitcher falls behind the hitters, he can't expect hitters to swing at the high fastball. Only when the hitter is behind in the count and in a defensive posture is he going to go for the high fastball above the
perfect
letters.
example right here with Howard Johnson. Dennis Martinez, the first times he got him out with fastballs, here he's trying his whole repertoire. He is trying to get him to swing at a ball. Does not want to throw the ball within the strike zone if he doesn't have to. And at 1 and 2, he's nibbling. Let's see if he's able to do that.
Half swing, he commits, and he gets tagged by Reed.
Well, he was able to, he was able to accomplish it. And again, if the count is 2-1, most likely he takes that pitch. See yourself from another angle. Right there. Does he go across? Well, way across front of home plate. And Dennis Martinez established his curveball early. Here in the 7th, he's still using it.
Anybody need a pitching coach?
Well, you know, it's also said that if you don't notice a catcher back there, that he's doing a good job, and Jeff Reed should be given a lot of credit.
Santana grounds 1 foul, and we can tell you that ABC's Monday Night Baseball is being brought to you by Coors Light, the silver bullet. There's no slowing down with this silver bullet. Two out. McReynolds at second base. 0-1 the count on Santana. With the pitcher's spot due up next, and Mazzilli already out of the on-deck circle. 0-2.
Perfect illustration, Tim, of Jeff Reed. Calls for the fastball, sitting in the middle of the plate, just kind of slides to the outside corner, gives the home plate umpire a great look, receives it right on the corner. As you look at Lee Mazzilli, who will most likely hit next if he has a chance to, with 2 out here in the 7th.
And if he doesn't get to hit, Gooden will probably go 1 more inning.
By no means maligning the offense so far of Jeff Reed, but when you're hitting $1.25 and still in the big leagues, you have to be a good catcher. And I think he's showing tonight that he does move around very well. Great pitch selection, the hidden game.
And he caught Dennis the last time he pitched, so he's pitched twice, and he's had Reed both times.
And Santana got on strikes, and so Dennis Martinez strikes out the side. He had struck out 2 through 6, and he strikes the side out here in the top of the 7th inning, and that, for the moment anyway, keeps Dwight Gooden in the game for another inning. At the end of 6 1/2, 4-0 Montreal. And so following Nightline, it's ABC Monday Sports Night. And a reminder that coming up this weekend, the U.S. Open Golf Championship from the fabled Olympic Club in San Francisco. Saturday, 3rd round coverage at 2:30 Eastern Time. The U.S. Open this weekend on ABC. We go to the bottom of the 7th inning. Casey Candell to lead things off. Candell 0 for 2 plus a walk. Lifts it in the air to shallow left field. Santana telling McReynolds he'll handle it, and he ain't lying. 1 away. 1 pitch, 1 out. Winningham will be the batter, and we can update some scores for you. Phillies beat the Cubs 3-2. If Montreal wins, by the way, they'll move into 2nd place. Pittsburgh and the Cardinals 1-1 in the 7th. Houston leading Cincinnati 1-0 in the 7th inning. Mike Scott has 13 strikeouts. In the American, the Yankees beat Baltimore. Tigers knocked off the Jays. Minnesota leading Milwaukee 5-0 in the 8th inning. Oakland leading Kansas City 5-4, and Mark McGwire has hit his 21st home run of the year for the A's. And the other games underway shortly. Winningham takes outside, ball 1. 1-0 the count.
0 for 11, 2 for 3 tonight. He's hot. As he said, he's due. And the other one was a deflected shot at Howard Johnson, who was probably the hardest hit ball of, more so than 2 base hits. An example, excuse me, Al, Scott with the, what, 12, 13 strikeouts against Cincinnati. I mean, is Cincinnati becoming another big red machine? Great offensive ball club. A team that I faced in the '70 World Series that basically not much pitching, but you can certainly score some runs, and a very aggressive hitting ball club. So if you're going to strike guys out, it's nice to have guys going up there, not taking a lot, aggressive hitters. It's not the case here. Montreal, very selective. Bobby Winkle's trying to get them all to hit ball back up the middle, even the home run hitter, Tim Wallach.
2 balls and a strike to count. Ball 3, and the count now 3-1. Reds are becoming a big red machine offensively, as you say. Pitching-wise, though, it's a whole other story in Cincinnati right now with Soto on the DL and Browning going down. And
Jerry Royce was released,
right.
0-5. Ron Robinson has moved into the starting rotation, and Bill Landrum was recalled. What a fine young arm he has. But when you think about it, with the exception of Houston and possibly Los Angeles, everybody in the National League is looking for a starting pitcher.
Right.
Where are they? In the Mets case, obviously, they're injured, most of them. John Tudor's out for the Cardinals.
It's funny, in addition to hearing so much about the juiced-up baseball this year, the other thing you're beginning to hear a lot is about the quality of pitching diminished to the point where a lot of people are saying they can't remember top to bottom in a general sense the pitching being this week, and he's picked them off at first base. So Herm Winningham was straying, trying to get back, and Gooden throwing over there, and Winningham has stolen 2 bases tonight. Had designs on the third, but Gooden nabs him this time.
That's really that balk move. He appeared to be in there. It looked like his hand was in there. But what Gooden does is he leans on the left leg. That's the old Dodger balk move.
So what the runner usually looks for is the heel or the shoulder. A guy named Davey Leonard, who had one of the best balk moves, and in fact used to bring him in, Earl Weaver bring him in just to pick guys off. Never had to pitch to anybody. What he does is you try to put your weight on your left side, lift your heel with your weight on your toe, lean your front shoulder towards home plate, and wheel to fire to first. Now, if the umpire will let you do it, it's fine. Now, there have been more balks called in the National League this year than any year in recent history, and the same in the American League.
Balks are up 61% in the National League alone.
Charlie Huff, long of tooth, said he had 3 called the other night from not hesitating. And we talk about that from the stretch situation. You have to pause for a second before you go to home plate. Well, they're calling. He had 3 the other night. He said they weren't a balk 15 years ago, but they were tonight. Talked to umpires. They said, no, we're just, they're balking more. We're not calling any. We're calling more, but we're not trying to be any more stringent with it in enforcing the rules. But again, that's something you have to do. If you're Dwight Gooden and you're tall and it takes a long time to get rid of the ball, you have to try to do something to deceive the runner. He was able to do it there, even though it did look like Herm Winningham did get back to first safe.
2-1 the count. Tim Raines hitless tonight, hitless yesterday. 0 for 8 in his last 2 appearances.
So scuffing the ball is cheating, but deceiving the runner at first is not cheating.
Only if you get caught, then they call a balk. See, scuffing the ball is illegal too, Tim, as I know you know. But of course, if you can get away with it, it isn't. How do you think Mike Scott struck out 13 tonight?
Well,
Being honest?
He's added.
Now it's 14.
He's added 1. 14 now.
We'll keep talking, which no doubt we will. He might get many, many more.
Well, he's not the only one in the National League to do it either.
3-2 the count on Tim Raines.
They're even accusing Nolan Ryan because he's come up with really a with the seam fastball to go along with that riser he's thrown for the last, seems like 20 years. And they're accusing him of turning the ball over, scuffing it, cheating.
Whatever he's doing, it's working. He struck out 11 the other night against the Dodgers. We were talking about striking out 10 or more. That's 167 times for Ryan. And still 13 for Palmer. And Raines is gone. So Tim 0 for 4 tonight. That's 6 strikeouts for Gooden. His night is over. They'll pinch hit for him in the 8th with Montreal on top. 4-0. Start the 8th inning. Dave Magadan batting for Dwight Gooden, leading things off against Dennis Martinez. And the count is 1 ball and 1 strike. Magadan, rookie third baseman, will be followed by Dykstra and Almond. Dennis Martinez working on a shutout. Good fastball. Martinez, remember, struck the side out in the 7th inning, and he's ahead here 1-2 on Magadan.
Well, Dwight Gooden will bring the best out in you if you have it, and Dennis does have it. An interesting story from Frank Cashin, who's now the executive vice president and general manager of the Mets, was how when he ran the Orioles, how they signed Dennis.
Magadan drives one to the gap in right center, but moving over is Webster to make the catch. 1 gone.
Going back to that story, take a look at Keith Hernandez. I don't know if he's talking about the great pickoff mood that picked off Herm Winningham, or he's talking about Dwight really didn't pitch that poorly, other than that ball down the right field line and gesturing over his shoulder, which wasn't really hit that hard, but it's a team game. Not vintage Gooden. What a good performance. Anyway, going back to that story, Dennis is from Granada down in Nicaragua, and they wanted to sign him. They had heard about a youngster that had a great arm. He had a curveball and a fastball at that time, and they had Frank used to work for a brewery in Baltimore, and they had a brewmaster who was from Cuba who loved baseball. They got him to go down to Nicaragua to be the interpreter, and the Orioles end up signing Dennis.
And he turned in some fine seasons in Baltimore. In the National League, since coming over, his only complete game was last August at Pittsburgh. And interestingly, it was a shutout. Trying to duplicate the feat tonight. 1-2 now.
Well, I talked earlier about the alcohol problems, and seeing him over the winter in Baltimore, he seems to have battled those successfully. Of course, I think he also understands that will be something he's always going to have to battle. But the one thing, and we talked about this in New York the first couple games, Al, is that to really have a good pitching staff, Tommy John talked about Tom Seaver, what an older pitcher or even a starting pitcher wants to do is give club quality innings. And one thing Dennis Martinez can do if he's healthy, and certainly appears tonight, is go out there, pitch every 4th or 5th day, depending when you give him the ball, and give you 6 to 8 good innings. Can't say that about too many pitchers nowadays.
Fouled at the plate, and with Montreal's bullpen, that's all you're looking for. If you can get a guy going out there giving you 6 or so. They've got Tim Burke, who's really come on. They've got Andy McGaffigan, who's done a nice job for them. They've got Bob McClure setting people up and also coming in to get left-handers out. They've been spotting him. They've just recalled Jeff Parrott. Martinez, meanwhile, trying to become the first to pitch a complete game shutout against the Mets this season. They've been shut out overall 3 times in combined efforts. And Dykstra fouls it away, so Buck Rogers has to be pretty happy with the way things are going with his pitching staff right now.
Well, complete games are things of the past. The Expos only have 4 complete games this year, and I think a lot of managers, from a modern day standpoint, saw the success that Whitey Herzog had in 1985 with not one stopper. I mean, the Cardinals lost Bruce Sutter, and then he had the bullpen by committee, and I think a lot of teams are emulating Herzog now.
That's grounded foul, and it's still 2-2.
Because what you do with the bullpen by committee, you make the opposing manager use players by left and righting him. Even though the Expos have only one left-hander, There are a lot of teams that are bulking up their bullpen with 2 left-handers and 2 right-handers. And by doing that, you manipulate the lineup. That's one of the big reasons that complete games are things of the past.
It's one major reason why the Toronto Blue Jays are having as much success as they are this season, as Dykstra goes down on strikes and flings his bat away in disgust, and that's 6 strikeouts for Dennis Martinez. Bill Almond will be coming to the plate.
Well, just when you're supposed to be tiring, the curveball's getting tighter. Looks like he still has awfully good velocity with his fastball. And that's not a pitch that Dykstra hasn't seen. He's thrown that pitch to him all night long. So if you do get a little bit tighter and the ball does not have that tight spin, well, he's probably looking for it, but they're still not able to hit it.
0-1 the count. Man has had his problems on the left. Ron Darling with just 2 victories at this point. Dykstra still angry and frustrated. Grounded wide to third. Backhanded by Law. Long throw. Nice stretch by Galarraga for the out. And Martinez 3 outs away now from a shutout. It's still 4-0 Montreal after 7.5, and we'll return to Olympic Stadium after this word from your local station.
A lot of cases, or a lot of instances, that's what's happened with this ball club. I think everybody told us we were bad for so long that we just went out, and everybody on this club has busted their tail to be good.
And right now, they're almost good enough to be in second place in the National League East, and that's where they will reside when this one is over if they hold on. Because Chicago has lost, the Cubs would drop to third. And we'll get an update for you on the Cardinals, who were tied with Pittsburgh, and now the Pirates have taken the lead in that game, 3-1 Pittsburgh in the 8th inning. So Montreal could not only wind up in second place, but move to within 5.5. Jeff Innes, who's been a relief pitcher through his professional career, he's a rookie. He made a start, though. The Mets were in such dire straits for starting pitching that he had to make a start on May the 25th in San Francisco after 191 consecutive relief appearances since he broke into pro ball in 1983. And he faces Mitch Webster, who came on in the lineup when Tim Wallach was removed because of that foul ball that Wallach took off his ankle back in the 5th. Innes, one of those who works out of the stretch even with nobody on base, and the count 0-2.
Gotta like Webster, hard-nosed player. The type of guy that you figure he takes his uniform off, goes in and showers, no deodorant zones, Baraxo. Just kind of puts it all over his body. I mean, doesn't say much. You try to talk to him. I mean, he doesn't want to. He just wants to play. He didn't play tonight because he's a switch hitter that's kind of been in a slump. So Buck Rogers gives him a night off, puts in a guy that's 0 for 11 in Winningham. Gets what, 2 or 3 hits? I mean, no wonder they're playing so well.
I'll tell you, if he's using Baraxo, I'm glad I'm retired. Imagine what Gary Carter's going through now. Baraxo.
Oh, Baraxo. I don't know why.
I love it.
He fouls it away.
Well, we talked last week about how Toronto has really gone in this Major League draft, and they've gone. I mean, George Bell hit about 7 home runs last week for $25,000. Here's a guy that got here to Montreal because of that same draft. Back in '85, they had Manny Lee and Lewis Thornton. They couldn't use him. They sent him back to the minors, and Montreal got him in a trade, and he really played well for him. Playing right field where Andre Dawson played last year. Good defensive outfielder. Beat Winningham out for the job in center field, so he can do a lot of things for you, and he's a switch hitter. 36 stolen bases.
Led the National League in triples last year with 13. He's a good player.
He's a guy who was drafted originally by the Dodgers way back in '77, and then he wallowed in that Toronto system. That's a tough outfield to break in with when you had Bell and Mosby and Barfield. Remember, he was playing in the minors behind those guys as they were coming up. Or in the case of Bell, after Bell had been plucked in the minor league draft in Philadelphia. Fouled away, and it's still 1 ball and 2 strikes to count.
Of course, the rule is that if you do take a player in that major league draft, it used to be 25,000, now it's 50. He has to stay with your major league clubs, count as one of the 24 men. So a lot of times you get such a great steal that you take that risk. And that's what they did in '85. And Mitch Webster came over here to Montreal. As you see him take strike 3.
So one gone.
After that buildup.
I was thinking the same thing.
Sure. Thanks, Mitch.
Well, this is why he didn't play tonight. Buck Rogers said that we see, I mean, a nice breaking ball from Ennis. He just said he has not been seeing the ball well from the left side, so give him a night off, and the only reason he's really playing because of the injury to Tim Wallach.
One gone, and UB Brooks is the batter. Again, Brooks has been back in the lineup now only about 3 weeks. And he's hitting .319. Strike. And here's a guy who didn't play at all in August and September. Then the offseason. He gets a little over a month in spring training and then broke his wrist on the Danny Darwin pitch. So UB has played very sparingly, but hasn't lost that stroke as he drills one into left center, up the gap, off the wall. And as Dykstra gets it back in, Brooks winds up at second, and he has a single, a double, and a triple tonight.
Well, a hanging breaking ball that stays inside. And Hubie Brooks, even with all of the hand problems that he's had with the broken right wrist earlier this year, the operation and the really nasty looking left thumb, he's got a button in it, he's got a scar that goes from the tip of the thumb down to the base, 30 stitches in it. He still has strong hands. He is one of the real quality offensive producers in the National League. Two years ago, for instance, he had 100 RBIs. He got his 100 on a home run off Ron Darling at Shea Stadium. And that year, 40% of his RBIs were with 2 outs. And tonight, the triple came with 2 outs to drive in 2 runs. He's doubly dangerous with a couple outs.
Tough in the clutch, and a guy who couldn't win a batting title. Remember, last year he was hitting .340 when he had to go on the DL, so he'd had a shot at it. Galarraga takes outside, ball 1. You know, we were talking about Reed before, what he does defensively, and I think it points up the strength of this Montreal lineup, at least 1 through 7, in that you can afford to have a Reed in the lineup. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier tonight. They were able to start 5 men, including Galarraga, hitting better than .300, and 2 others in the .280 category.
Well, Galarraga is another one of those guys that an injury has really helped him. Last year, at about .270, 10 home runs, he's hurt his right hand.
Johnson to Hernandez for the out. Brooks remains at second, and Vance Law will be the batter.
So with a bad hand, he cuts down on his swing. He's coming into the game hitting over .330. Not hitting the long ball, but he is hitting the ball back up the middle. Good defensive player. Last year he struck out 79 times, I think, in 320 times at bat. I mean, over a third of the time. Not exactly the best way to go about hitting.
Minnesota keeps on rolling. How about Blyleven? Not only a shutout, but that means he didn't give up a home run tonight after, what is it, 20 consecutive starts in which he had given up at least 1 homer.
And he gave up 50 last year. Major league record.
I wonder if he's disappointed.
I wouldn't imagine. No.
So he's home, Blyleven, with a shutout.
That's Eastern time.
With apologies to Chris Berman. Law, half swing strike. Berman's greatest, though, is the San Diego
John,
outfielder.
I am not a crook.
1-1. He wasn't much of a crook last week. I think he was like 1-13. In there for a strike and the count 1-2.
You talk about a young man who never gets cheated. Not Jeff Ennis, but John Crook. He has 3 healthy cuts every time he's up there. The fine left fielder, first baseman for the San Diego Padres.
inside the law. 2-2. Final score now. Pittsburgh has defeated St. Louis 3-1. I beg your pardon. That is being amended now by Ken Wolf. Strike that from the record. It's 3-1 Pittsburgh, bottom of the 8th. Hernandez is there to make the catch in foul territory. And Montreal is done here in the bottom of the 8th inning. No runs to hit. The man left on. To the 9th we go. Montreal 4 and the Mets nothing.
National League East leading St. Louis cool off by last place Pittsburgh tonight. In the 8th inning, Mike Diaz against Pat Perry, and Diaz crunches it right here. Heading for the seats in left field for Diaz's 10th home run of the year. Gives the Bucks a 3-1 lead. Cards 4-game winning streak in jeopardy. Back to Montreal.
And here at Olympic Stadium, it's Keith Hernandez to lead things off in the top of the 9th inning. Montreal on top by a score of 4-0 as Hernandez takes a strike. Keith 1 for 3, hitting .308.
It looks like Keith has an idea about growing that mustache back, does it not?
I asked him about that before the game. He shaved it off last week, hit 2 home runs in a game at Chicago. He grounds it foul outside first. He just said, hey, look, my beard grows quickly. I can grow it back in just a couple of days. Connecticut loves the Mets and Keith's mustache as well. But he's gained strength from shaving it off with 3 home runs in his new state.
The reversal of the Samson Delilah story.
Yeah, right. One and 2. They appeal. Don't get the call. 1 ball, 2 strikes to count.
Well, that's how you hit 300 every year. 0-2, you can check your swing. I mean, that's a good breaking ball. Most hitters would commit themselves. Holds up and gives himself another chance. But the only time you will ever see him expand the strike zone is with 2 strikes. It's not that high.
By expanding the strike zone, of course, you mean that he's looking away, which means that he's vulnerable inside. I think a lot of little league pitchers grow up thinking that the only time that a good curveball should be thrown is with 2 strikes. If you flip-flop that thinking, usually it's correct, because the good hitters like Hernandez, when they look away, they're vulnerable inside, which means that that's the time you can jam them, and the curveball's an easier pitch to hit.
Of course, that's only if you're disciplined. And you're looking at one of the most disciplined hitters that I've ever seen. The only pitch I've ever, even when I pitched to him, was a changeup. That's right there. He worked Dennis Martinez for a walk. Got him to do exactly what Dennis didn't want to do with a 4-0 lead, especially leading off the 9th inning.
That's the first walk that Martinez has yielded since the second batter of the game when he walked Tuffle. And that means McClure and Burke will get up. Bob McClure is the left-hander, and Burke is their closer in the Montreal pen.
You know what a tough decision is a situation like this. 4-run lead, a guy that's pitched very well to the 8th inning, or through the 8th inning. And you have 2 relievers, and we saw McClure and Burke. They'd like to come in before the game gets really deep into having them in a pressure situation. And then you have Buck Rogers, who would like to see Martinez save the bullpen, get out with a shutout. So tough situation.
Carter drives one to deep center field, and going all the way back is Winningham to make the catch up against the fence to the deepest part of the ballpark. And it's a tough way for Gary Carter's 9-game hitting streak to go down the drain.
Well, the one thing Winningham did, he realized that the ball was high enough. The fence isn't going to move, so you've got to find the fence first, and that's what he does. He goes back to the fence and then jumps. This is not a timing play. To the fence, and now he jumps. That's what that warning track's there for. 3.5 steps, and then he jumped. Good play by Winningham.
He's had an active night. And Carter's had a frustrating one. Strawberry, he too has had a frustrating night. He's hit the ball sharply twice and struck out. He's 0 for 3. Line to right, line to short, and went down on strikes. Two and 0 the count.
Well, Dennis has pitched him. He threw him a breaking ball. He hit a rocket to right for now. Then he threw him a fastball away. He lined out to short. Take a look at Buck Rogers.
There's ever a time to challenge. It's right now, right, Jim? A walk.
Well, the situation is that you'd like to have a shutout, but you don't want to put additional runners on. So here's 2-0. My best fastball down the middle. See if you can hit it. And it ran low.
Instead, he's 3-0 with McReynolds waiting on deck.
And again, Dennis most likely has not pitched 9 innings or into the 9th inning all this season. So a lot of times he knows what to do. He's been out there enough. He just can't do it.
And Strawberry is on. And so Rogers, looking over toward Larry Bernard, the pitching coach, has watched Martinez walk 2 here in the 9th inning, and McReynolds coming to the plate.
And the problem with leaving him in, Al, is that you're now going to do almost the same thing, and maybe you won't leave him in as we see Larry Bernard come out, is if you get behind McReynolds, you're going to do the same thing you try to do Strawberry. You're going to lay it in there, try to throw a strike, aim the ball instead of throw it. So a lot of times you bring in the fresh man, especially a guy like Tim Burke, who's had an outstanding, really 2 or 3 years for the Expos.
And if you do make a move after McReynolds, if McReynolds gets on, Howard Johnson represents a tying run, and then who do you bring in, McClure or Tim Burke? Johnson a better hitter this year as a right-handed batter, so maybe McClure will get the call.
And then you bring in the guy that you most likely don't want to have in, because Burke has pitched better than McClure.
That's right. So why not bring Burke in now?
You got it.
What he's doing right now is saying a prayer that Martinez can go all the way as McReynolds takes a strike in the count 0-1.
Well, McReynolds is a double play man if he does hit it on the ground. And by sending Larry Bernard out there, you can't go out with 1 ball or a 2-0 count on him. You have to let Dennis face McReynolds for the entirety.
0-1 to McReynolds. Is lifted to center field, and an easy play for Winningham. 2 gone. Hernandez still at second, and Strawberry, the runner at first, with 2 away now in the 9th inning. And Johnson, the switch hitting third baseman, coming up. Rogers' team will be, with a victory, 5 games over 500, 33-28. And again, if the Cardinals go down tonight, Montreal will be in second place by 5.5, and the Mets would remain 4th by 7.5. Cubs dropping to 3rd. Meanwhile, Martinez now in 15 2/3 innings in his 2 starts has given up just 6 hits. 0-1.
You can see still great movement on that fastball. The ball started on the outside part of the plate and was literally 6 inches outside when Howard Johnson swung at the pitch.
I would think that Buck Rogers is thinking now, it's not that Martinez doesn't still have good stuff. It's that the Mets have seen him 4 times. That really enters into a manager's thinking.
0-2 the count.
But you said it the first time around, Howard Johnson is a great fastball hitter, situational. He's going to look fastball whether it's 2-0, 3-1, 1-2, or whatever. If you get the breaking ball like he did last time when he struck him out of the strike zone, keep it out of the middle of the plate, below the knees, he's going to swing at it. Right now, you want to throw it in the dirt, keep it down. You see right there, Jeff Reed looks like a fastball inside. Nope, it's a curveball.
1-2. Hernandez at second and Strawberry at first with 2 out of the 9th inning. Montreal on top 4-0. trying to beat the Mets, and Dwight Gooden, who worked 7 innings tonight. Rogers checking out who remains on the Mets bench. Santana is due up next. And Johnson lifts it in the air to left field. Tim Raines will put it away, and the Expos move into second. And this ball club, so maligned by their fans, by other teams in a way, wondering what in the world was going on in Montreal, and even their own players. Hubie Brooks and Tim Wallach among the more vociferous in the offseason. They are now 5 games over 500, 2 games in front of the Mets, and in second place in the National League's Eastern Division. There are the totals. Martinez goes all the way to beat Gooden, and will return to Montreal after this word from your local station.